Good morning, Revelation Bible class. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have had some good times home. I know it's different, and I wish you guys were here. It'd be a whole lot easier to teach. It'd be a whole lot easier to be able to give these things out. But this is the situation we have for those who are going through this. I'm guaranteeing you, of all your school career, you're going to remember 2020. And you're going, hey, remember that section of, I don't know, 2 months that we stayed home? We did distance learning at Salem Christian School. You're going to remember all this. So keep hanging in there. I appreciate all you're doing. Some of you guys, just a reminder that when we have these quizzes, we had a quiz last week. You need to take your quizzes on time. Your quiz starts at 9 o'clock. So you need to get up and take your quiz. So that's all there is to it. This week, we don't have a lot of going forward, just, some of the work you've done. You guys have done a couple reviews and things like that. So that's not what I'm trying to do. We had to crunch all this Revelation class down a little bit. So I'm not giving you a bunch of that, but you do have a quiz every Thursday. So we have 4 more weeks really of school. So this Thursday you'll have a quiz. The one after that you'll have a quiz. The one after that you'll have a quiz. And the one after that you'll have a 9-week test. Please remember that all your notes that you're taking from the board, like you could freeze frame it right now and take these notes from the day, all those notes need to go in your notebook. All your quizzes that you take, print them off some kind of way and stick them in your notebook, just as if you were here. I'm going to grade that. We're going to have a car line at the end that I take in your notebooks, and it gives me something to grade to put down for your notes. We're not having exams this year, so say thank you, Mr. Brookins. You're the most awesomest person in the whole wide world. But we're not having exams, but we are giving grades on other things: quizzes, papers, reviews, and notebook. So make sure you keep your notebooks ready to turn in. As well, just to remember that the quiz that you have coming up this Thursday will be on the stuff that you're learning today and the stuff that you learned on last week's teaching video on Thursday. So every week, your quiz will be on the Thursday and the Tuesday, from the past week to the first one this week on the next Thursday quiz. So last Thursday, this Tuesday, this coming Thursday, you'll have a quiz on those two. Every week it'll be the same thing. So make sure you take your notes, pause the video, write down your notes, and then you can listen. I'm trying not to, these are 30 minutes or less typically. Every once in a while, maybe 32 minutes. Oh, we usually have an hour and a half class. So I'm trying to cut some of this stuff down, and that's where we're heading with you guys. We're going to make it through. It's going to be all right. It's been a learning experience for me and for the rest of our staff, and I hope for you guys as well, that you're getting ready to go into the world not too long from now and having all these nice responsibilities. So today we're going to kind of share with you the next little step on the book of Revelation when it comes to the trumpets. So kind of going back and reminding you of some things before we get into this. And I do have a cup of coffee over here. I'm going to sip every once in a while. The old pollen's trying to get a hold of me. But here's my little coffee drink, just as if I was in class. I'll give you this Maxwell House moment. Maxwell House. All right? So here we go. When we look through the book of Revelation, remember that you have all these sevens. It's a prevalent thing throughout the book of Revelation. In the first chapter, you see this glorified Jesus, and he has 7 stars in his hands. He's walking amongst the 7 lampstands. And the 7 stars are the leaders of that church, and the 7 lampstands are the church. So each one of those churches, a lot of 7s. And as we go through this, we get through the church age, and then we go into the tribulation period. Tribulation is 7 years. And then in the 7 years, you have 3 sets of 7s. You have the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and the 7 bowls. As we go through, we keep getting more and more destructive as we go along. The seals are the first thing to pop open. Just going back a little bit, remembering that they're in heaven, and John sees this scene, and all of a sudden the throne of God is there, and there's this scroll in his hand. It's the scroll of judgment. It's written on the front. It's written on the back. It means judgment is comprehensive. Just trying to remind you guys, I want to change your view on the book of Revelation. Everybody looks at it like it's so destructive, which it is, but it's destructive with a purpose, right? And so God's bringing all this destruction that came upon the earth is caused by man in the first place. We're the one that brought sin into the world. God's the one who's going to fix it. And so when you look at the book of Revelation, that's what it's like. So way back when in Daniel, that scroll was written. God gave him the scroll. He says, look, don't read it. Don't put it in your book. Just roll it up. And so they rolled it up and they sealed it, okay? And they're in heaven, and they're sitting there, and no one is worthy to take the seal of judgment, and proclaim this judgment on the earth. And they're sitting there, and all of a sudden, they just weep, they're crying. Oh man, nobody can do this. Why are they crying? Wouldn't you go, good, we can't judge anything, that's awesome. But they're in tears because no one's able to take the scroll of judgment. The reason they're in tears, and the reason you see later on the martyrs praying for judgment to come upon the earth, is it's a good thing. You're judging sin, the destruction of our world. We're seeing a lot of it in our world today, where many of our waters are starting to become polluted. Our food chain system, they have all kinds of impurities and issues in it, and people are crazy. I mean, it's nuts. We have this crazy disease or sickness that's going around that's locked up the whole world. I mean, all these things are falling right in line with just how we really need a total makeover. We've needed it from the beginning after man sinned, but we're getting ready to get it. But nobody can open the scroll to get it all done, and it makes people sad that judgment can't come on the earth, right? And all of a sudden, Jesus comes, and he's in the appearance of a lamb that was slain. In other words, he's the lamb. Remember the Old Testament, you sacrificed a little lamb for the sins, for the year? And in the New Testament, John the Baptist goes, "Behold, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world," talking about Jesus. Well, he comes in the Revelation scene, and he's a lamb that is as if he's been slain. He's been tormented and defeated, and nails in his hands and feet for us, and has been victorious. He overcame death, sin, and Satan. He grabs the scroll and takes it, and he's getting ready to have it open, because that's the one worthy to get this done. He has judged sin, and he's getting ready to finalize it. All of this stuff is going to be finalized in our eyes. He's already done it on the cross, finalized in our eyes. So that's what the scrolls are. And so then we had these 7 seals, and you open the first seal, and you see the destruction start taking place on the earth. The first one really is not destruction. It's the Antichrist, or this guy that goes out with the promise of, hey, I've got military might, but I have no arrow in my bow. All right? So he's got this power over people where he's able to defeat them with the threat of power, but he doesn't use force. And then we go on, we see the conflict and the various other things that happen, scarcity of food, of the seals that crack open. And every time we do, it gets a little more intense on the earth, okay? The other thing I want to remind you is the 7th seal opens up the 7 trumpets. And as we go along, the seals are bad as far as the earth is concerned. The trumpets are worse. And the bowls, that's just as bad as it gets, right? So we're going along this destructive scheme. These 7 years on earth are getting more and more intense. I believe somewhere close to the middle of it is when the super intensity starts to take place, wherever that may be. Different people have different opinions. But there's going to be this destruction. And when you get to these areas, remember the 7th seal opens the trumpets, but between the 6th seal and the 7th seal, there's this little interlude of information that we need, and basically say, hey, don't open up the 7th seal until this happens. We have to seal the 144,000, and then this innumerable multitude comes out of the tribulation period. So we have these different variety of things that are taking place, and then later on we're going to find out between the 6th and the 7th trumpet, there's also another there's an interlude of time, informational interlude, that we have the mighty angel, and we're going to learn about the 2 witnesses that we've just lightly touched on so far. We're going to learn about them a little bit more. So you have these gaps of time in between these, because it's like the next step is taking place. So today we're really going to talk about the trumpets. That's pretty much what we're going to talk about today. We're just going to try to get through these trumpets. So remember, 6th seal, we've had, now hold on, don't open the 7th seal. After those 2 things happen, the 144,000 are sealed. These other characters, an innumerable multitude of nations all around the world, are taken out of the tribulation period, and they rejoice. Then boom, we open the 7th seal, which cracks the code to the angels with the trumpets, and they come and blast their trumpets, right? One by one, they blast their trumpets. So that's what's happening. So we're going to go right to it. I want to show you 2 things. First of all, the trumpets are broken up into two sections. The first four trumpets are judgment of nature. We'll talk about that in a minute. The second set of trumpets are judgment of man. So we hit man where he lives, or we hit man in the natural world, and then we hit man, boom, directly at man. So it's kind of like, in Job gets nailed, and when he gets nailed, he loses some kids, he loses some crops, he loses some animals, but then he gets boils on his body. That's what this is like. We hit you in nature, where you live, and then boom, we're going to hit you directly on you. You're going to get hit. You're going to get nailed. So that's what these trumpets do. That's kind of the overview of them, and we're going to kind of go back and look at them. So let me read this first part of this chapter 8. I read it to you last week. It says, when he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about a half hour. So I told you last week that there's silence in heaven. There's a dramatic pause, if you will. And so it's like you've had these 6 seals, pretty intense. The last one especially, cosmic disturbances. And then boom, all of a sudden, we go, wow, there's silence. Why is there silence? Because that was nothing. The seals are nothing compared to the trumpets. This is going to get way more intense. So everybody realizes that. Then it says, and I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Then another angel having a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense, that he should offer it with prayers and all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there was a noise and thunders and lightnings and an earthquake. So that the 7 angels who had 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. So they're getting ready to sound. But this one angel, imagine, he has this incense of prayers. And again, I go back to why are they praying judgment on the earth? Because we want the earth to be judged, to be done, to be perfected. So he gets this incense. It's almost like one of those guys in the Olympics that just twirls around. And whoa! And he chucks it down on the earth. And there's just like, oh man, thunder and lightning, all this kind of crazy noises happening. And all of a sudden, these 7 angels appear to go, all right, we're the ones to toot the trumpets. And each one comes up, toots their trumpet, and a different thing happens. They have a time period. Trumpet 1, and then whenever later on, trumpet 2, does this trumpet. That's kind of what the scene that you kind of see is laid out for you. So I'm going to go through it. They don't have a lot of description, but it says the first angel, verse 7, sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. And a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. So the first trumpet sounds, and vegetation is struck. Imagine that. Remember, it's hitting your vegetation and your nature, but if you hit vegetation, that's where we live. That's what we eat. That's what gives us oxygen. Trees give us oxygen. This is a third of it. A third of it was taken out. I mean, I want you to think through this. I don't know all the ramifications of this scientifically, but if a third of the trees on the earth were taken away, what's that like? What does it do to the temperature? A third of the trees are taken away. What does it do to the oxygen levels, CO2 levels? How does that affect all that? That would be an interesting concept to think through. But a third of it's taken away, boom, burned up. And, grass is burned up, the whole 9 yards. So all of a sudden the grass is gone. A third of the grass is gone. That's a pretty intense situation right here. No, it says, a third of the trees, but all of the green grass was burned up. All of it. So all the grass gets burned up. Imagine, I'm looking at the window right here, and I can see the green grass and just gone. No green grass. What does grass do for us? You ever think about that? What does grass do? One of the things it does for us, feed our animals, if nothing else. Whatever it provides for us, but it feeds our animals, and it's gone. All of a sudden, it's gone, right? So this is crazy stuff that's happening that people are going to kind of live through during this tribulation period. And the Bible says in another place, if these times weren't shortened, nobody's going to survive. Not the elect either. I mean, it's just terrible. So that first trumpet, we have vegetation struck. The next trumpet, trumpet 2, the sea is struck. The second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. And a third of the sea became blood. And a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. So you got your next little situation going on. And again, you see these thirds, but it says a third, this fire came down through the sea, and it said a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures died. So all of a sudden, all the hundreds and thousands and millions of sea creatures in the oceans or sea around the world. We have all of our oceans, but we also have seas. It just says seas, right? Boom, this thing hits it, turns to blood, and a third of them die. Can you imagine that? What's that like? Can you imagine just the stench, the dead animals, stuff floating up to the top, or, just the fact that a third of all these big, huge body of waters has turned into blood. That would be crazy. Just nuts. So Atlantic Ocean is, 41, 42 million miles of area. And it's like, boom, a third of it, psh, done. Pacific Ocean is way bigger than that. Can you imagine that? That's crazy to think about, that all of a sudden a third of that's gone and a third of the creatures in it are gone. The other thing is, what does that do to the people who go out and get the fish for us to eat? How do we deal with that? How do we deal with that situation? We lost some of our food supply. We've already lost our grass. We lost a third of our trees. Or some vegetation has been hit. And then boom, we get our seas that are gone. I just think through this stuff, right? The next one, the trumpet blast, and the waters are struck. Now, he specifically mentions here in the third trumpet, then a third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on the third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the water because of it was made bitter. So all of a sudden you get this great star, Astromegas is what this kind of that word is, great star. Maybe, who knows what this is, but an asteroid of some type, whatever it may be. But we don't drink ocean, but we do drink, it says springs and rivers. We do drink from that. All of a sudden we've lost a third of our drinking water. And some people still drink it, and it's bitter, and it kills them. I mean, literally, drinking of this water can kill you. So we've lost a third of our drinking water. Can you imagine that? That's crazy. So, boom, vegetation. We have our seas. Now our drinking water has been taken out. Not ours, because I want to be gone out of here, right? But the people on earth, tribulation period, this is what they're going to go through. This is nasty stuff. Now, he's not really attacking men yet directly. He's attracting them indirectly. Boom, boom, boom. All this stuff is being judged, right? And so we get to the fourth angel, and it gets even more intense. It says in verse 12, then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, a third of the stars, so that the third of them were darkened, and a third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of the heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, 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 in the heavens of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. Okay, a couple things here. So let's go back to this and check this out. And when we look through it, we see a third of the, basically the stuff in the sky that shines is gone, right? And you see this, the third of the stars, a third of the moon, and a third of the sun. Just imagine that, going dark. And then it said a third of the day did not have its light, right? And a third of the night didn't have its light. So all of a sudden, there's darkness over a big chunk of your 24-hour period, okay? When you go at the nighttime, you see, I mean, there are a few nights that look darker than others depending on what the situation is, but a lot of times you have stars and moon and everything else. But if a third of that's gone, you don't have as much. You know, the stars do this little number. Imagine a third of them are gone. So you go outside, your vegetation's been struck, your sea creatures are struck and smelling, you can't have as much water to drink, and at least 2 extra sections of time are in darkness, total darkness. What a scary time that would be, all right, to think through, and you have this darkness that's taken upon the earth. Not to mention, The sun does a lot of stuff for us, so does the moon actually, but the sun does a lot of stuff for us. And all of a sudden, it's not there to do its stuff. It's gone.